It's been almost 20 years since the first Final Fantasy installment was released on the NES, and since then the franchise has blossomed over a wide range of platforms. Recently, a lot of the early Final Fantasy games have been remade for the Game Boy Advance or with reworked graphics and new dungeons. Final Fantasy III differs from those as it is both the first major RPG to be released for the DS and also the first game in the series to be given a graphical facelift. The question is, are 3D graphics enough to breathe life into an old game? In short, the answer is yes. As any die-hard Final Fantasy fan will tell you, the characters and storyline are the most important thing in the series, so being able to play a 3D version of them on the move is just an added bonus. Final Fantasy III will impress anyone familiar with the series as it contains all of the essential elements of a classic Square Enix RPG, from the iconic airships that you gain along the way to the cute chocobos and powerful summons. Final Fantasy III does little to disappoint. The storyline is the same as the original game and puts you in control of Luneth, an orphan who falls down a hole one day and is chosen by a crystal to bring light back to the world. His battle against darkness will cause his path to cross with a number of other people who join forces with you. Gameplay is pretty much as you would expect, with its fair share of dungeons, boss battles and towns to explore. Aside from these, Square Enix have really utilised the DS to include some nice features. For example, using the stylus while navigating through menus minimises the time spent out of the action and simplifies the organisation of your party. The Mognet system allows you to connect to the Nintendo Wi-Fi service and send mail to your friends that also have the game. On top of this, you can send mail to the NPCs within the game to trigger bonus quests and open up hidden dungeons. Another nice feature is the job system. From the 4 characters you have in your party, you are able to choose what job they are. These jobs unlock as you progress through the game, starting off with the more common ones like White Mage, Black Mage and Warrior, eventually opening Viking, Ninja and Dragoon. This makes the gameplay a lot more flexible as it requires you to build a well-balanced team but also gives you the option to change your profession to suit a certain situation. The sounds in the game are very nostalgic and the soundtrack is really well suited to the gameplay as it increases in pace during battles and creates atmosphere and tension in unexplored dungeons. Final Fantasy veterans will be pleased to know that Square Enix have included a selection of the favourite summons from previous Final Fantasy adventures. With the likes of Ifrit, Shiva and Leviathan making an appearance, you'll give those bosses something to fear. All in all, Final Fantasy III is a fantastic conversion of an old game to a new platform that is executed with precision and style. There is enough content in this game to make it last for a long time, with the option to level each of the 20 plus jobs up to level 99, as well as your character's level. You're going to be playing this for a long time. Square Enix have even included a hidden dungeon with a very hard boss similar to the weapons from Final Fantasy VII to really give you something to aim for. If you are new to Final Fantasy or you've played most of the series, I highly recommend you buy Final Fantasy III as it has an excellent storyline, a multitude of features and an impressive lifespan. Final Fantasy III was released on May the 4th and you should expect to pay around £25 to £30 at most video game shops. The Star Fox franchise has been around for years now, with the most popular versions being on the older consoles such as the NES and SNES. The DS version, Star Fox Command, puts a slightly different slant on the usual type of gameplay by adding in some touchscreen elements and some fantastic online play. The storyline is similar to the old games, but this time round, instead of it being the crazy ape scientist Dr. Andros trying to take over the Lylat system, it is the Angler Emperor and his followers. After frequent attacks on the homeland of Corneria, it is up to the elite squadron known as Star Fox to save the day. The only problem is that all of the 4 pilots have moved on and are no longer part of Star Fox. The squadron's leader, Fox McCloud, isn't in contact with the other pilots anymore, and since Star Fox no longer exists, he bravely decides to fight the Angler forces on his own. Gone is the old system where you would fly down a set path and then go into all range mode, because Star Fox Command features just all range mode. For those of you who haven't played the old games, all range mode is basically a 3D cube which you fly around, fighting enemies inside, instead of the old format where you would just fly along a set path first. The action is broken up with some interesting uses of the stylus such as plotting routes and firing missiles. At the start of a level you are assigned a set number of turns which you cannot go over. You then draw a line for each pilot to plot their flight path, but they can only go so far each turn due to a fuel limit. You have the main mothership on the map and your goal is to protect that by destroying all of the enemies. If any of them reach it, it is game over. Should your flight path collide with an enemy fighter, you will then go into all range mode and have to destroy a number of fighters to collect some stars. When all of the stars are collected, you can then progress to another level. This format gets increasingly interesting as you gain control of multiple ships and you have to prioritise which enemies to attack first, which adds a nice strategic element to the game. The section where Star Fox really comes alive is the online multiplayer. One thing that was always missing from the old Star Fox games was a good multiplayer option. Some of them had them, but they weren't very exciting. Star Fox Command features online play via Nintendo's Wi-Fi system and uses a ranking system that you can slowly increase as you win multiplayer battles. The satisfaction of playing against players from all over the world is awesome and helps breathe life into this game. The stylus is used throughout the game as the main navigation of your fighter, with the option to switch to inverted controls if you prefer. All of the original moves are included, with the spin being activated by moving the stylus quickly from left to right. On your radar, which is basically the bottom screen, there are the buttons used for doing a full loop and a 180 turn. Double tapping the top half of the radar makes you boost, whereas double tapping the bottom makes you brake. Another feature of the radar is the bomb icon. Whenever you pick up a bomb, you can drag it over the enemies using the radar and it will be dropped on them. All of these little features make playing Star Fox Command such an enjoyable experience, as it uses the original formula from the old games and adds its own style to improve it. The campaign mode has many different routes you can take and boasts multiple endings, so it'll take the average player some time to finish everything. There is also a nice gallery feature which showcases each of the different pilots and their ships. On the whole, Star Fox Command combines a new mission planning feature and online play to an already perfect game series. Whether you are new to the series or an avid follower, Star Fox is a much needed addition to your collection. Star Fox Command was released in January of this year, and you should expect to pay around £20 in most video game stores. Importing games has always been an excellent way of playing titles that might not ever be released in the West. The only problem is the language barrier, as Japanese is so different to English. In this feature, I'll be taking a look at 3 games I imported from Japan and seeing if the Japanese is too much of a barrier to make them playable. First up is Chocobo Tales, which puts you in control of a chocobo who must defeat bosses to free his friends. The battles in the game are done using card battling, which can get tricky in parts. The basic gameplay involves exploring the map and completing mini-games to open up new areas with more games and bosses. So from my experiences, I found Chocobo Tales to be fairly easy to play despite being Japanese. Obviously the storyline went right over my head and the card battles were a little confusing, but it was playable and very enjoyable. Chocobo Tales is already out in the US and coming out later this month in Europe, so I recommend holding back for that one despite it being easy enough to understand. Second, we have Heroes of Mana, which is a sequel to Children of Mana, which is also on the DS. Gameplay in this is very different as it is more strategy based and there is no dungeon clearing or real-time fighting. Gameplay involves visiting different worlds, collecting materials and defeating enemies. Heroes of Mana wasn't such a success as I found a lot of the controls confusing, the gameplay misleading and the storyline impossible to follow. Unfortunately, I cannot recommend importing Heroes of Mana as it is just too confusing to understand in Japanese. The game looks fantastic, so I'd wait for a US or European release before playing. Finally, we have the mech-based strategy game Front Mission First, which is a direct port of the old version which was originally on the SNES. The action is set on the bottom screen where you choose where to move and who to attack. On entering battle, the top screen shows an animation of the fight and shows who takes what damage. With the option to customise your machines, this game is a lot of fun and has a good lifespan. Front Mission was a great surprise as almost all of the stats for the mechs were in English, so it was easy to follow and upgrade. Even some of the cutscenes are in English, which makes it possible to pick up parts of the storyline. I would highly recommend Front Mission First to people who can't wait for a US or European release as it's easy to follow. Thanks for watching the very first episode of Compact DS. I hope you enjoyed the show. Until next time.